Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. We're ready to get into another fascinating exploration of the forces shaping India and the world.
Yes, definitely. It's always intriguing to delve into these complex issues and see how they connect.
Especially for those of you gearing up for the UPSC exams. Think of this as your daily dose of current affairs, specifically for March 16th, 2025. This is part one, by the way.
We've got a diverse range of topics lined up, aiming to hit those key areas you need to be familiar with.
Some might even be a bit of a refresher, but, repetition is key for those exams. So consider this a solid review session.
Right. And as always, we encourage you to hit that like button and subscribe if you find these deep dives helpful for your preparation.
All right, so let's kick things off with an initiative that's making waves, literally, in the realm of water conservation, Mission Amrit Sarovar. Now, I understand the Indian Railways is even getting involved in digging ponds for this mission.
Yeah, they are. It's quite an ambitious project, really. So the main goal of Mission Amrit Sarovar, which was launched back in April 2022, is to create or rejuvenate 75 ponds, or what they're calling Amrit Sarovars, in every single district in India.
Wow, that's a lot of ponds. So what are we talking about in terms of numbers nationwide?
We're looking at a target of around 50,000 water bodies. It's a direct response to the increasingly urgent issue of water scarcity, particularly in rural India.
Makes sense. And are there specific guidelines about the size and capacity of these Amrit Sarovars?
Oh, absolutely. Each pond needs to have a minimum area of 1 acre and be able to hold approximately 10,000 cubic meters of water.
So it's not just about digging any old hole in the ground. There's a real focus on making these impactful.
Exactly. And another really crucial aspect of the mission is the emphasis on community involvement.
Oh, right. Yeah. Involving local communities is so important for sustainability, right?
Absolutely. So for every Amrit Sarovar, the location has to be approved by the Gram Sabha, and then a panchayat representative actually oversees the entire construction process.
That's smart. It ensures local ownership and hopefully better long-term maintenance of these ponds.
Exactly. And it's not just about the water itself. The mission also emphasizes utilizing the excavated soil for other infrastructure projects in the area, a smart way to maximize the resources and benefits.
Well, that's interesting. It's like a holistic approach to development.
Right. And speaking of holistic, we're seeing a real whole-of-government approach to Mission Amrit Sarovar.
What do you mean by that? Like, which ministries are involved?
Well, you've got the Ministry of Rural Development, the Ministry of Jal Shakti, the Ministry of Culture, Panchayati Raj, and even Environment, Forest, and Climate Change all playing a role. And of course, they're collaborating with various technical organizations as well.
So it's quite a collaborative effort.
Yeah, it really highlights the priority being given to this mission.
Now, I know our UPSC aspirants are probably wondering about the funding side of things. Is there like a specific budget allocated to Mission Amrit Sarovar?
Well, that's where it gets interesting. There isn't actually a separate dedicated budget for this mission.
Really? So how are they funding it then?
It operates by converging different existing schemes at the state and district levels. It's more about using existing resources and frameworks efficiently.
That's pretty clever, actually. Avoiding the whole process of setting up new funding streams.
Precisely. And they've got some serious technical expertise backing it all up. The Bhaskar Acharya National Institute for Space Application and Geoinformatics, BISAGEN for short, is their technical partner.
Isaac, okay. What kind of role are they playing?
They're bringing their expertise in space applications and geoinformatics to the table. Plus, they've actually developed the Amrit Sarovar portal and a mobile app.
Oh, that's pretty high tech. So what are those for?
They're being used to monitor the progress of the mission, track its impact, and get real-time updates from all the participating districts.
So it's not just about digging ponds. It's about using technology to make sure it's all done effectively and sustainably.
Exactly.
All right, let's move on to a topic that's been generating quite a bit of buzz, especially among parents and students. The Automated Permanent Academic Account Registry, the APAAR ID.
Ah, yes, the APAAR ID. There's definitely been some discussion around this one.
There have been concerns raised about it being voluntary and, how easy it actually is to opt out. Can you break down what this APAAR ID actually is?
Sure. So the APAAR ID is basically a specialized identification system that will be given to all students in India under this One Nation, One Student ID program. It's part of the implementation of the National Education Policy 2020.
So every student will have this unique ID.
Right. You can think of it like a lifelong academic passport, a digital record that consolidates all of a student's achievements, their degrees, scholarships, awards, any credits they earn, all under one unique 12-digit ID.
Hmm. That's pretty comprehensive. So how would this work in practice, like for schools, higher education institutions, and the students themselves?
Well, for schools, it'll streamline the way they record and manage student data. All their academic information, achievements, even extracurricular activities will be linked to this AP ID. And then when a student applies to, say, a university or a skill development institute, these institutions can access those records with the student's consent, of course, for their admission and recruitment processes.
So it's meant to make the whole process smoother and more transparent. And what about from the student's perspective?
Well, for students, it's about having a unified academic identity. All their records are in one place, digitally stored and easily retrievable. It could potentially make moving between different levels of education or institutions much less of a hassle.
Yeah, that makes sense. It sounds like it could be really beneficial in terms of efficiency and mobility. But what about these concerns regarding data security and privacy?
Those are valid concerns, absolutely. The government has stated that data security and confidentiality are paramount. So the idea is that all information sharing through this system will be consent-based. Students will have control over what data is accessed.
Okay, so there are safeguards in place. And what about the data itself? Where is it stored?
All the data collected by schools will be stored in the Centrally Managed District Information for Education portal, also known as UDIS plus FLOT.
UDI plus law, okay. But even if there's consent involved, some people are still wary of having all this information stored in a central database. And how does the opting out process work?
So initial enrollment into the APAAR system will require parental consent, and the government says there will be a mechanism for withdrawal. But yeah, some people are concerned about how easy it'll actually be to opt out later on.
It's a system with a lot of potential, but those data protection measures and the clarity of the opt-out process are going to be really crucial for its success.
I agree.
Okay, let's shift gears now and talk about a long-standing international issue, the situation in Nagorno-Karabakh. There's the news of a recent agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan aimed at ending almost 4 decades of conflict over this disputed region.
It's definitely a significant development.
For those of us who might need a refresher, can you give us a bit of a geographical and historical overview of Nagorno-Karabakh?
Sure. So Nagorno-Karabakh, or Artsakh as Armenians refer to it, is this landlocked mountainous region in the South Caucasus. Internationally, it's recognized as being part of Azerbaijan.
But it's not that simple, is it?
No, not at all. Historically, the region has had a predominantly ethnic Armenian population, and it was actually functioning as an unrecognized republic for many years.
Yeah.
Geographically, it's quite diverse, with everything from open steppes to dense forests and high-altitude meadows. But the core issue, the root of the conflict, really, stems from these long-standing ethnic and territorial disputes, with Armenians in the region seeking either independence or unification with Armenia.
So this is a conflict with deep historical roots.
Oh, absolutely. You can trace it back over a century, but things really intensified in the 20th century, especially after the collapse of the Russian Empire. Both Armenia and Azerbaijan staked their claims to the territory. Then, during the Soviet era, in the 1920s, the Soviet leadership decided to create the Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Region within Azerbaijan.
Even though it had an Armenian majority.
Yes, and that decision, understandably, created a lot of tension. When the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, Karabakh declared independence, which led to the First Karabakh War from 1992 to 1994.
And what was the outcome of that war?
Well, Armenian forces ended up gaining control of the region, as well as some surrounding territories that were internationally recognized as part of Azerbaijan. But then more recently, in 2020, the Second Karabakh War broke out, and Azerbaijan managed to regain some of that lost territory. By 2024, Nagorno-Karabakh was officially dissolved.
So this new agreement, it comes after a long and turbulent period.
It does, and while it marks a potentially significant step, the underlying issues related to ethnicity and territorial claims, those are still very much present.
A complex situation for sure. All right, let's turn our attention back to India and discuss a major initiative aimed at strengthening our healthcare infrastructure. The Pradhan Mantri Ayushman Bharat Health Infrastructure Mission, or PM-ABHIM for short.
PM-ABHIM, yes. A crucial step in enhancing India's health system.
We've heard about an upcoming memorandum of understanding between the Delhi government and the Union Ministry of Health and Family Welfare to implement this mission in the capital. Can you tell us a bit more about the main goals of PM-ABHIM?
Sure. So PM-ABHIM is a centrally sponsored scheme with some central sector components, and it has a substantial financial outlay, ALSI 4,180 crores to be precise, for the period from 2021-22 to 2025-26.
That's a lot of money.
It is. It shows the level of commitment to this mission. The main aim is to bring about a new generation of health reforms to strengthen health service delivery and public health initiatives across the country.
So it's not just about building new hospitals.
No, it's much broader than that. It's about strengthening health systems at every level, primary, secondary, and tertiary. And it also focuses on preparing India for future pandemics and health emergencies.
It's a comprehensive approach then.
Exactly.
Now, what are some of the specific things that will be done under PM-ABHIM?
Okay, so under the centrally sponsored component, there's a focus on building what they're calling building list subcenters, which are essentially upgraded to what are known as Ayushman Arogya Mandirs, or AAMs.
AAMs, okay.
Right. And they're also planning to establish AAMs in Halibin slum areas. Then at the block level, you'll have the block public health units, or BPHUs, being set up. And in each district, there's going to be a district integrated public health lab, IPHL. And then in districts with a population of over 5 lakhs, they're going to develop critical care hospital blocks, or CCBs.
So it's about strengthening primary healthcare facilities and ensuring there are enough critical care facilities available as well. But, health is primarily a state subject in India. So how does this all actually work in terms of implementation?
That's a good point. So for the centrally sponsored components of PM-ABHIM, the implementation is being done through the existing structures and mechanisms of the National Health Mission, or NHM.
Okay, so using existing frameworks.
Exactly. So while public health and hospitals are state subjects, the Union Ministry of Health and Family Welfare provides technical and financial support to the states and union territories. But the actual execution and rollout at the grassroots level, that's the responsibility of the state governments.
A collaborative effort, then, between the center and the states.
Yes.
All right, let's switch gears once again. This time, to celebrate a fantastic achievement by India in the field of space exploration. The Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, has successfully undocked 2 satellites as part of their space docking experiment, or SpaDeX mission.
Yeah, that was a really remarkable feat, a testament to ISRO's growing capabilities.
For those of us who might not be familiar with the technicalities, can you explain what the SpaDeX mission is all about?
Of course. So SpaDeX is essentially a technology demonstration mission. It's about showcasing India's capabilities in the complex field of in-space docking. It involved launching 2 small spacecraft, a chaser and a target satellite, using a PSLV rocket.
PSLV, right.
Yeah.
And what was the main goal of this mission?
The primary objective was to demonstrate the technologies needed for rendezvous, docking, and then undocking these 2 spacecraft in low Earth orbit.
Okay, so actually getting 2 satellites to connect in space and then separate again.
Precisely. And they also had some secondary objectives, like demonstrating the transfer of power between the docked spacecraft controlling the combined spacecraft and making sure the payloads could still operate after they undocked.
It sounds incredibly complex.
It is. But ISRO pulled it off beautifully. They achieved the undocking on March 13th, 2025, and get this, it was on their very first attempt.
Wow, first try. That's impressive.
It was. It all took place in a 460-kilometer circular orbit with a 45-degree inclination. And now both satellites are orbiting independently and are reportedly in good health.
So they've demonstrated all the key technologies for docking and undocking in space. That's a huge step forward for India's space program. What does this mean for our future ambitions in space?
Well, it's a major accomplishment. It makes India only the 4th country in the world after the US, Russia, and China to achieve this kind of controlled in-space docking and undocking. The technologies that were validated through SpaDeX, they're crucial for more ambitious missions in the future, like bringing back samples from the moon. And who knows, it could even pave the way for human spaceflight missions someday.
Because you could potentially assemble and service spacecraft in space.
Exactly.
It's exciting to see ISRO pushing those boundaries. Okay, let's bring our focus back down to Earth, but still on a global scale. The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, has issued some stark warnings recently about the growing risk of economic fragmentation.
Yes, it's a growing concern in the global landscape.
What are their main worries?
UNCTAD is essentially saying that the world is becoming more fragmented economically. They're worried about rising geopolitical tensions and how different countries are diverging in their policy approaches, which could ultimately disrupt trade and hinder long-term economic growth.
So it's about the potential for conflict and lack of cooperation to damage the global economy.
Precisely.
For our listeners preparing for the UPSC, can you give us a quick rundown of what UNCTAD is and what it does?
Of course. So UNCTAD was established back in 1964, and it's headquartered in Geneva. It's a permanent intergovernmental body that operates within the UN General Assembly.
Okay, so it's part of the UN system.
Right. And its main mandate is to support developing countries, to help them access the benefits of globalization in a fair and more effective way.
How does it do that?
It does this through a few different ways. They conduct a lot of economic and trade analysis, they try to facilitate consensus building among member states, and they provide technical assistance to developing countries, helping them leverage trade, investment, finance, and technology for development.
So it's a support system for developing nations in the global economy.
Exactly. And while it's part of the UN Secretariat, reporting to both the General Assembly and ECOSOC, it has its own structure, its own membership, and its own budget.
It has a fair bit of autonomy then.
It does.
UNCTAD has been around for a while.
Right.
Are there any significant moments in its history or any important reports that they're known for?
Oh, definitely. The very first UNCTAD conference back in 1964, that was a landmark event. It really put the focus on the needs of developing countries in the global trading system. Then, in 1989, there was the establishment of the Agreement on the Global System of Trade Preferences Among Developing Countries, or GSTP. That was a big step towards boosting trade between developing nations. And, of course, the creation of the World Trade Organization, the WTO, in 1995, that significantly changed the landscape of global trade.
So UNCTAD has been involved in some major shifts in the global economic order.
Absolutely. And another important milestone was UNCTAD's 10th conference, which was held in Bangkok in 2000. The Spirit of Bangkok declaration that came out of that conference, it really emphasized the need for differentiated approaches to address the specific challenges faced by developing countries in a rapidly globalizing world. And then in terms of reports, UNCTAD is known for publishing several key annual reports, like the Trade and Development Report, the World Investment Report, and the Least Developed Countries Report. These are all really important sources of information analysis on the global economy.
So UNCTAD is definitely a key player in the global economic landscape, and one that our UPSC aspirants should be aware of.
Absolutely.
Let's shift gears again and talk about something a bit closer to home, literally.
Sure.
The Pilibhit Tiger Reserve. I hear it's being considered as a potential new home for rhinos from Nepal.
Yeah, that's right. There are efforts to establish a permanent habitat for rhinos there. It could be a significant conservation success story.
Can you tell us a bit more about the Pilibhit Tiger Reserve itself? Where is it and what makes it special?
Sure. The Pilibhit Tiger Reserve is located in the Pilibhit district of Uttar Pradesh. It's a crucial part of the larger Terai Arc landscape. And hydrologically, it's quite important. It's where the Gomti River originates. And it's also a major catchment area for several other rivers in the region, like the Sharda, the Chuka, and the Malakanat. The habitat itself is a mix of sal forests, tall grasslands, and swampy areas, which are, maintained by the flooding of these rivers. And interestingly, the Sharda Sagar Dam forms a large part of the reserve's boundary.
It sounds like a really rich and diverse ecosystem.
It is.
What about the climate and vegetation in the area?
So it's generally a dry and hot climate, which influences the type of vegetation you find there. There are dry teak forests and soils that are characteristic of the Vindhya mountain range, but the dominant vegetation type is the North Indian moist deciduous forest. You'll find dense saw woodland covering about 76% of the reserve's area, and these forests are interspersed with grass meadows.
And what kind of wildlife can be found in the Pilibhit Tiger Reserve?
Well, apart from the tigers, of course, it's home to several other endangered species like the swamp deer, the Bengal florican, the hog deer, and you'll also find leopards there. And then the bird life is pretty incredible. You've got species like the swamp francolin, the great hornbill, and many others.
Sounds like a bird watcher's paradise.
No, absolutely.
So introducing rhinos to this habitat could really add to its ecological value.
It would.
Okay, let's dive into a truly mind-boggling scientific breakthrough now. Researchers have, for the first time, turned light into what they're calling a supersolid.
I know, it sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
It does. Can you explain what a supersolid is?
So a supersolid is this incredibly unique state of matter where particles essentially exhibit contradictory properties. Imagine a solid that can flow through itself without any resistance.
How is that even possible?
It's because of quantum mechanics. At extremely low temperatures, close to absolute zero, most particles in a material will settle into their lowest possible energy state. And it's at these ultra-low temperatures that quantum effects become dominant, and you start to see these bizarre behaviors.
So a supersolid is both a solid and a liquid at the same time.
In a way, yes. It has the ordered structure of a solid, but it can also flow without any friction, like a superfluid.
It's mind-blowing to think about. And this breakthrough with light, how does that advance our understanding of supersolids?
Well, before this, supersolids had mainly been observed in Bose-Einstein condensates, which are formed by cooling atoms down to those ultra-lower temperatures close to absolute zero. But this new research shows that you can actually create a supersolid state using light.
So they've essentially created a supersolid out of light.
Yes, by coupling light and matter together in a very specific way. And this is a big deal because it means we can study supersolids in a whole new way. It opens up possibilities for exploring condensed matter physics under these extreme quantum conditions.
What kind of implications could this have for technology or other fields?
Well, it has potential implications for a lot of areas. It could lead to more stable quantum bits or qubits for quantum computing. It could lead to advancements in optical circuits and photonic devices. And it could even deepen our fundamental understanding of the nature of matter itself.
It's a really exciting development.
It is.
Okay, let's move on to a topic related to strengthening India's defense capabilities. The Ministry of Defense has recently signed a major contract for a new radar system, the Ashwini Radar.
Yes, the Ashwini Radar. A significant step in bolstering India's air defense capabilities.
Can you tell us a bit more about this radar system? What are its key features and how advanced is it?
So the Ministry of Defense has signed a contract worth 2,906 crores with Bharat Electronics Limited, BEL, for these low-level transportable radars, which are called Ashwini.
Okay, so they're transportable, which means they can be moved around as needed.
Exactly. And technologically, they're pretty advanced. They use active electronically scanned phased array technology, which is, state-of-the-art. They're capable of tracking a wide range of aerial targets from fast fighter jets to slow-moving objects like UAVs and helicopters.
So they can detect a wide variety of threats.
They can. And another important feature is that they have integrated identification friend or foe or IFF systems.
So they can distinguish between friendly and enemy aircraft.
Right. And they use electronic scanning in both azimuth and elevation, which gives them a 4D surveillance capability. Plus, they've been designed for high mobility, and they have advanced electronic countermeasures, ECCM capabilities, which means they can operate even in environments with a lot of electronic interference. And they have automatic detection and tracking functionalities as well.
So a very sophisticated system. And it's all indigenously developed, right?
Yes, that's a key point. The Ashwini Radar is a product of collaboration between DRDO and BATO.
That's great to hear.
It is.
All right, for our final topic today, let's talk about a rather unfortunate infrastructural challenge that's been in the news. The unfinished bridge over the Brahmani River in Odisha.
Oh, yes, the Brahmani River Bridge. It's been quite a long and frustrating saga for the local communities.
It has. The construction started 8 years ago, and it's still not finished. What's the latest on this?
Well, the bridge, which is being built near Brahmaputra, it's meant to connect over 20 villages in the Rasulpur and Jajpur blocks of Odisha.
And its absence is causing a lot of inconvenience for those villagers.
It is. They're facing a lot of hardship because of the delays.
Can you tell us a bit more about the Brahmani River itself?
Sure. It's a major river in eastern India, flowing primarily through Odisha, although it's known as the Damar River in its lower reaches.
Where does it originate?
It's formed by the confluence of two rivers, the Sank and the South Kal, near Rourkela in Odisha. Both of those rivers, they actually originate in the Chota Nagpur Plateau. The Sank starts near the Jharkhand-Chhattisgarh border, and the South Kal starts in Jharkhand. The Brahmani Basin, it covers a pretty large area, over 39,000 square kilometers, and it drains parts of Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, and Odisha, and then it eventually flows into the Bay of Bengal.
So it's an important river for the region.
Oh, absolutely. And it actually forms a large delta along with the Mahanadi and the Baitarni rivers just before it reaches the Bay of Bengal near a place called Palmaris Point. And that's where the Bocanica Wildlife Sanctuary is located, which is famous for its estuarine crocodiles.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
It is. The Brahmani River is about 799 kilometers long in total, and around 541 kilometers of that is within Odisha. And geographically, it's notable for cutting across the Eastern Ghats, forming a minor gorge at Rangali in Odisha, where there's a dam.
A river with quite a history and ecological significance.
Yes, it is.
Well, that brings us to the end of part 1 of our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have. It's fascinating how all these different topics, from water conservation to international relations to scientific discoveries and infrastructure challenges, they all connect in some way.
Absolutely. And for our UPSC aspirants, this was your Current Affairs Deep Dive for March 16th, 2025. Remember, even if some of these topics were a bit of a review, repetition is key for those exams. We talked about Mission Amrit Sarovar and the community-driven approach to water conservation. We discussed the APAAR ID and its potential benefits, as well as those data privacy concerns. We explored the complex situation in Nagorno-Karabakh and the recent agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan.
We also delved into the PM-ABHIM and the government's efforts to strengthen our health infrastructure, ISRO's impressive achievement with the SpaDeX mission, UNCTAD's warnings about economic fragmentation, the potential for a new rhino sanctuary at the Pilibhit Tiger Reserve, and the groundbreaking creation of a supersolid made of light.
And finally, we touched upon the infrastructural challenges and delays with the Brahmani River Bridge. As you continue your UPSC preparation, think about this. With the increasing use of advanced radar systems like the Ashwini, how might this impact India's national security strategies and border management in the years to come?
It's a question worth pondering. These technological advancements always have broader strategic implications.
Don't forget to like this deep dive and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analysis that will help you ace those exams. We'll be back soon with part 2 of our March 16, 2025 Current Affairs Deep Dive.
See you then.